and howdy, Dr. Keith, and of course the fabulous Tedesco brothers as well. So folks, very pleased and excited to have with us a wonderful group. These guys are a heck of a crew. We have the fabulous Tedesco brothers, world-respected ufologists. And I know you guys don't like to be called scientists, but you're applied scientists, which means engineers. So same thing. And and I hear that now you're handy-dandy Tedesco 5000 ultraspectral gadget, which has been it's been on the back burner for me. But now, as a result, I heard, and I'm very happy and honored that you guys are giving me 75% off.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and with us also, we have Dr. Keith Taylor, which I actually learned about Dr. Taylor through Luis Elizondo. And Lou was saying, I appreciate all the fan mail and stuff, but why don't you also thank people like Dr. Keith? And so we connected. And for those that don't know, he's an adjunct assistant professor for a New York City area college, and also a deputy undersheriff for an NYC area sheriff's office. And he's also involved in training and assisting law enforcement officers in said area, especially as of late, Dr. Keith, with the drone incursion. I know you've been involved with that. And so thank you. And all three of you folks. I also still appreciate our constant correspondence, and you're putting up with my pestering you. I pester politely, so hopefully not too bad. So thanks. Go ahead, guys. Totally looking forward to this. Please tell us what you have to talk to us about, and then of course we'll jump in with all our questions.
Okay. Keith?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start, and thank you. It's a great honor to participate. And of course, I don't represent any of the entities that I am associated with. This is my own personal views and passions working with the Tedescos. I asked them some months ago if they would be interested in working with me to develop a paper. There was a call for papers from Naval Postgrad School about UAP, and this call for papers was being done on behalf of Aero. And so I asked if they would collaborate with me to create a paper for submission for consideration, a publication of their the journal that they're focusing on UAP. It's the journal is called ECCO, ECCO. And so over the summer, I went on a number of outings with them, and thoroughly enjoyed learning about all the different considerations when you're looking at trying to discern UAP or anomalous behavior from all of the prosaic things that can tend to confuse and conflate what you're doing. And so I was fortunate enough to really enjoy these excursions and learning about the expertise that John and Jerry have, why they are so special. I call them the Wright brothers of this age based on the work that they're doing and its importance for the future of understanding UAP and how to really deal with it. My whole concern as a law enforcement professional and educator is that we have, as a discipline, the training, equipment, and policies that allow us to deal with this issue in a rational and safe way. And up to this point, we haven't gotten the kind of leadership that I would hope from the federal level, and it has to be from that perspective, since this is an issue that affects all states, all of our communities, and has been affecting them for many decades. If you gentlemen want to talk about our study and the kind of work that you found, or rather the results that you found.
Okay. Our goal was to when we got in touch with Keith, and we created this this project, this this other project, where we would try to create a model for law enforcement on collecting data in the field on UAPs, since they're the first responders that often come along first and often see these, tend to see these things first. So what we wanted to do is, based on the study we did, is offer recommendations on the kind of equipment they would need, the kind of protocols in the field, and the methodology applied to the field work. It's the best data, and Keith was really instrumental in helping us establish that. And of course, we worked on a paper with him, co-authored a research paper with him on conducting this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is, I mean, I also want to say too, it's, there's something to be said about, the kind of research that we do with boots on the ground. It's, there's a lot of things that, are a lot of things that are prosaic that can be explained very easily. But there are a lot of things too that come into question. And if you're not out there, on a regular basis, I mean, you can be fooled. And many times, we've looked up into the sky. We've seen objects that, appear to be anomalous, and, there is a prosaic explanation for them. And then there are times when there isn't, and we've exhausted all the other possibilities. But even, with the kind of experience, being out there and seeing these things, we live next to two different airports. We see the flight traffic in and out, and I can tell you can definitely be fooled by this stuff, and having the right observations, the right equipment on it. And that I mean multiple pieces of equipment, multiple cameras, multispectral cameras, and because not all the data is going to agree. Mm-hmm. You have to be able to differentiate that.
That's the best way to deconflict these things, is by instrumented means. I mean, having multiple observers is great, but instrumented means multi-layered layers of systems of equipment. So you get a data set, a full data set on these things, where you can make that determination, like a unique fingerprint.
I would just like to mention that the Tedesco brothers were recently featured in the MIT Technology Review. And the title of that article was "How These Two Brothers Became Go-To Experts on America's Mystery Drone Invasion." And what we're seeing happening in Europe is that airports are being closed in Germany, Poland, Denmark, Belgium, Lithuania. It's just something, and of course we know what's happened in our recent past in this country. Everybody references the New Jersey, issue, but this is a very real problem, and it needs to be addressed through science and through proper policy. And so working with the Tedescos and trying to figure out what technology can be utilized is something that I am not only interested in pursuing, but I know that our federal law enforcement and defense agencies have also shown an interest in.
And that's something we've also been doing. Is this work is expanded into including in a partnership with the FBI. Of course, any data we collect, we share by and any instrumented means that we can deconflict these with normal prosaics. But that's shared, and of course they have their own resources and great investigative resources to look into that further. The other thing, as I should say, is talking about the drone incursions. Is October 10th, before I forget, will be featured on the history program. The Proof is Out There, and we'll be talking about the drone incursions and the kind of things we've been observing and we've been collecting data on.
And this is something that's continuing too. This is, this has been ongoing. We're still recording data out there off the Long Island shores. Quite recently, we've recorded quite a few sightings of drone-like aircraft. But it's it seems to be on a rise. Now I don't know whether or not this is something that is going to correlate to what we had last year, October and November. But there definitely seems to be some increase in the sightings and the presentations of these subjects.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a pattern, a repeating pattern
Mm-hmm.
that we saw in last year, and we saw back in also in 2022, and I think there was an incident that started back in 220.
Yeah, as well. Yeah.
And I'll just mention that in 2024, the Major City Chiefs Association did publish something they called the UAP Reference Guide, which provided a very good starting point for law enforcement leadership unfamiliar with this issue by giving a background history up to and including the David Grush congressional hearing. Of course, we've had multiple hearings since then, all with relevant information as regards to the issue of the problem of government not sharing important information with the populations that they serve. We also have seen the head of Arrow recently on a program with Neil deGrasse Tyson talking about the encounters that law enforcement have had with unknown craft or phenomenon, and their efforts to try to prepare the federal law enforcement entities with the ability to manage those types of incidents. Not only managing the incident when it occurs, and I think this is where the Tedesco's work really is important, but managing the crime scene as well, not crime, but the investigative scene as well. Now, there are other entities that I would be remiss without mentioning. Certainly, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies and the work that is being done there is very important. You can still hear me? It looks like I might have phased out a little bit.
You froze a little bit.
We can hear you just fine. And
okay, so I'll keep talking.
You're good now.
Apologies for the silence. We're just letting you folks go through it, but yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. And
great. Then I'll just continue talking whether or not I can see myself on the screen. but we've got some incredible work being done by SCU in terms of trying to focus on the investigative techniques that are being utilized from the scientific perspective to help deal with these incidents as they occur. I think that the work of the Tedesco certainly dovetails well with the efforts that SCU is doing now and has been doing in the past. You also have the Visible College, which is from the academic perspective, trying to move forward this issue of looking at the phenomena as an academic issue worthy of study, and trying to peel back the layers of stigma that have that previous academics have encountered when they've tried to research this issue in a meaningful way. And you have many other, the Galileo Project, the Soul Foundation, the Rice University, just so many people who have really put their own reputations on the line there to address this issue in a serious way, which it sorely deserves based on the reports that the average citizen has talked about, has uploaded video to social media, and that we see this happening not only in this country, but all over the world. We see this happening. Similar types of phenomenon, of which I think there's probably a wide variety, and also the similar lack of ability to respond to it in a way that I think it deserves. John, Jerry, do you guys want to?
Sure. And Keith mentioned some of those other organizations that are looking into UAPs and doing a good job. I should mention the Vasco project by Beatrice Villarroel. We had our partner out here recently, Dennis Asberg. He's the explorer who's looking into the Baltic Sea anomaly, but now also working with Beatrice on her vanishing objects, the transients that she's looking that are possibly in geosynchronous orbit around the Earth. Some unexplained lights and glints, and there's a whole process. There's a whole paper on that.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I mentioned Hestlin project. I know they're regrouping and getting restarted to look into the phenomena in Norway on these unexplained lights in the sky. We've been coordinating with them as well and collaborating in helping them get their system up to date, up and running. There's another scientist which we begun collaborating with. I think it was called NRG or NGR Scapes. It's an Australian researcher looking into this phenomena as well. There's UAPX, Dr. Matthews Zadagas and Kevin Knuth, and those researchers. They're trying to get back into it. They did publish a paper recently on their work on Catalina Island in the Pacific.
And we want to congratulate them on
yes,
that.
and congratulations on that paper.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we certainly want to, between all of these groups, we certainly want to keep the lines of communication open.
Yeah.
I mean, I think collaboration is a must in this field. I think, I think we have to kind of lower those walls at times. I mean, we don't want to work in silos. We want to be able to work with other groups. The resources are slim right now. They're tough to get. I mean, some groups have some things other groups may not have. The sharing resources it's really important. But again, it's the open lines of communication. We have to keep that. If we're going to move towards some kind of disclosure in this thing.
And I should also mention also Ryan Graves, pilot Ryan Graves group, ASA, Americans for Safe Aerospace. They're doing a great job in collecting pilot reports, and they're supposed to. My understanding is they're supposed to release some data on the collections. So we'll see where that goes.
There are so many people. I think of Richard Lang, one of the old school investigators who's done, yeoman's work, written a number of books, particularly one about first responders. There are so many people that historically have worked sort of almost alone in isolation on this issue, and those who have done so publicly and had to deal with the barbs of public ridicule and stigma. Dr. James McDonald comes to mind.
Absolutely.
As one of the pioneers who was really working hard and suffered because of it. And when I mean suffer, I talk about what has been alleged by whistleblowers in congressional testimony about official efforts for influence operations to discredit individuals who were trying to pursue this seriously or try to whistleblow about activities that were being conducted without the knowledge of the Congress or the American people. I feel like I am preaching to the converted. Certainly everybody who's watching this was probably well aware of everything that I've said to this point. But it's important that that folks understand that this effort is not slowing down, that despite the backtracking that may occur, the lack of the approval of the UAP Disclosure Act for the third time, is certainly something that is disheartening. But I don't think that that alone will be enough to stop the overwhelming effort to get to the truth about UAP, about mystery drones, about whatever you want to call this phenomenon that we don't understand. And I've said previously that my personal feeling or speculation is that UAP represents a wide range, diverse range of things, both the nuts and bolts, as well as areas of non-corporeal plasma, maybe consciousness-based, or some sort of combination, as well as advanced technology that we're not familiar with. So all of the options are on the table until more serious work is done, and the resources that are needed to really move the whole effort forward are allowed to proceed. You have Congress people who allude to the fact that this is a real thing. You have our intelligence community admit as much years ago. So the argument about trying to prove that something is real is long since past. The problem now is getting people to understand the significance of that admission, as well as acknowledging what individuals are experiencing and seeing and recording themselves throughout the world. So my hope is that we will continue to see efforts for institutions and individuals to work together to provide some guidance on allowing us to deal with this in a rational way, not a catastrophic way for society.
And it's to add to what Keith was saying is there's definitely a lot going on in the private sector, and we'll probably have to put some focus on that. I mean, there's the official channels, but there's the private channels too. We should be focused on.
Do you guys? We'll have a ton of questions, but we can hold off for a bit more. But I'm just curious. Why on earth would anyone want to prevent disclosure of or understanding thereof non-human intelligence or other types of intelligence? And the reason why I ask that is we're all pretty amicable acquaintances or friends with Timothy Phillips, former deputy director of Arrow. And at least according to Timothy Phillips, as long as there's nothing interfering with or uncovering or disclosing anything defense related that would weaken our national defenses or in any way jeopardize our nation's defense, at least in his perception, his understanding, Arrow and all the agencies that he had dealt with and all the laboratories and so forth, federal, etc., we're all in favor of, by golly, if we discover there's NHI, non-human intelligence, and we prove it, and no national defense was jeopardized, yeah, we're on our way to a Nobel Prize, greatest verification and proof in human history. So why would anybody be against that? And it certainly sounds like, Tim Phillips is seems like a very kind-hearted, good guy, and I've known him for a while, and I believe him when he says his experience at Arrow was that as long as it doesn't jeopardize defense, they're not concerned, and they'd be perfectly fine with the discovery of non-human intelligence. But for some reason, there are, I don't know if you want to call them forces or people that are against it, and I don't understand why. Does it all boil down to power and money, or is it something else that I just don't get? And I'll bow back out because I apologize for interrupting you guys because you're doing great presenting.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I think it's a loaded question. Lots of possibilities. I think we all have different opinions on that. Power and money is always a root of these kinds of things, but I'm sure there's national security issues that haven't been worked out. I don't know, Keith. Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, I was just going to say we can all speculate on what we think reasons are. They can be very diverse, and they can change over time. But I think we're at the point where we need to know how to deal with these things because they obviously exist. We're recording them, and people are getting injured by them, and we need to respond. We need to have a rational response to it, as opposed to simply denying that it exists at all, and starting from a perspective of hopefully one day we can prove that intelligent life exists in the universe. How about we just deal with the incidents that people are dealing with on a daily basis, I imagine, all over the world currently. This is not rocket science in that there have been accounts going back many, many years of unusual, unexplained phenomena occurring. And lots of famous incidents that are well known, and a lot that I'm sure have not been publicized or haven't been written in books or reported in newspapers. But the overwhelming number, if you look at the hundreds of thousands of reports that have appeared in newspapers, appeared in in MUFON's investigations themselves, that there is a unfortunate idea that I have that relates to Ryan Graves' testimony, where he said 95% of the incidents that military pilots were experiencing, they would not report due to the consequences of them doing so. They didn't want to be made an example of. I think we could probably say that would occur not just with military pilots or commercial pilots. That would probably happen with law enforcement or other communities where reporting on such an incident would have serious ramifications for themselves, for their careers. So I think that sort of held us back to the point where we don't understand the scope and scale of the problem or the types or kinds of threats that we may actually be facing. So we're kind of left to ourselves to define what the issues are and what the solutions are. And I think that is not a good way to address a very real issue. We need to have science lead the way and not classify science just because it reports information that is not what we want to hear. We can't deal with reality as we would like it to be. We have to deal with reality as it is and meet it and address it in a very serious way.
I think it's irresponsible too that for a government agency to stay silent on something like this. Especially if there is a flight safety issue, if there's an issue towards a law enforcement or the public at large, that encounter these things that are causing some health concerns, some health risks, and Gerald myself, had an encounter back in August of 22 that we had a physical manifestation with an object, and if something is known about this, and it really should be presented to the public and in a responsible way, to let them know that there are some concerns and there are things that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, we have no idea what the long-term long-term effects of these things are, but people make contact with them, and they may make contact with something they can't see.
Mm-hmm.
It's a problem. The transparency has to happen. I mean, I think what's happening in Congress, it seems to be shared bipartisan, but it needs to be much more aggressive. I mean, they definitely have to pass bills that get subpoena power, to have some of these people forced to come forward and testify about what they know. I mean, otherwise it's kind of shallow the way we're covering it. You have a few people coming forward saying things, but you definitely need that subpoena power. These people have to be brought forward to talk about that's the Air Force. I haven't seen anybody, well, except for the latest whistleblowers. We haven't seen virtually nobody from the Air Force talking about these things.
They've been silent. They've been
I would just like to mention too that we have to sort of get out of our ideas of nationality and all the other definitions that we use to separate ourselves. We're dealing with a global issue. And so reporting, I believe that the only way that we are going to be able to get reporting that is consistent and accessible will be through some sort of governmental entity. But that won't be enough, because this is an issue that does not respect human borders. So we have to have the same capability to get that information and share it with our global partners and even adversaries, which requires that we work together. And that is unfortunately something I don't see happening in any meaningful way as relates to this issue.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's been over 70 years that this has been kept in the shadows, and that's really not acceptable.
Yeah, so 70 years or
Jim, did you want to mention?
oh yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
I apologize if you were continuing. I can go back off screen. I wasn't trying to interrupt. Sound like you had more info. I was gonna interject, but if you guys,
fine, yeah. If you have questions, that's fine.
Yeah, we're definitely open. To that.
But did anybody have any questions? By the way, I've got a ton, but I'm gonna defer to everyone else first. Okay. So, Seth.
I just received fans, and I have a stupid question I can ask.
Go. Yeah.
I can just tell you, so
Yeah. Gino.
we can just address them. I received fans, and I'm just curious, if they're focusing on Long Island, do they ever think about taking that RV and checking out any other spots?
Yes.
There are parts of it.
Yeah, I heard it's something about being on Long Island.
Have you considered taking the RV to other areas besides Long Island?
Yes, and that's one of the issues with funding is this is an older RV. It's we've gotten a lot of use out of it. We've covered the island, but we definitely need upgraded systems. It's definitely upgraded transport. More rapid deployment of vehicles too to get out there. So the other thing is we're trying to look into is some kind of funding. Our hope is that something materializes on that end.
And I should mention that in case folks don't know, Tim Phillips has come out recently and mentioned the importance of the Tedesco's work, not only their book, Nightcrawler Eye on the Sky, as being instrumental for helping Aero to develop their own system, but they looked at the Nightcrawler itself, the RV that they're describing, and used that to help them reconfigure the Gremlin system that they currently use, using the very robust resources of the federal government. I can only imagine what would happen if the Tedescos were properly funded. I can imagine phase 3 getting some sort of maritime representation for their work. So taking it out into the water is something that I think would be a great way to move forward with this study, especially with Congressman Burchett just mentioning about the probability of undersea-based activity.
And that's something that's the area we want to go with this. We've actually put together proposals for a maritime nightcrawler system. That would be a retrofitted boat with equipment, everything from sonar to an omnidirectional sonar to portable ROVs that can be deployed from the boat using radar and all the sensor equipment we have, and an expanded land operation that go beyond Long Island. So I mean, we've already put together these proposals. We're expanding them. It depends on funding.
Right, and it's purely voluntary at this point. I mean, it's, we have a lot of folks that do step up and they offer assistance.
There's
and so
people
forth.
offering, yeah.
But you definitely need that kind of support too.
Yeah,
you need public support.
Yeah,
you need support of the academic community as well.
Yeah, and the funding is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of bizarre that on the one hand the federal government funds a lot of things, and I'm not critiquing our government, because God knows we always critique our government, and we're tearing our poor government this way and pulling it that way, but SpongeBob, I don't know. But the problem is, as far as I see it, and maybe I'm wrong, is just funding's limited. And then we have, as far as I understand, and forgive me if I'm clueless here, but there's a so-called government shutdown, but that excludes critical infrastructure as far as I'm aware. But then different programs are always being cut, Department of Government Efficiency, etc. And then even though we're all, United States citizens, Americans, etc., you got different parties, and then we've got an independent party. Everyone's got their own fiefdoms and their own purposes and stuff like that. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that sounds to be like the crux of the matter as far as you folks trying to get funding to progress, and actually in return for the government to help you folks to help all of us, because even though the United States is still well-to-do, and God willing will stay that way, you never know in this economy, just money's spread everywhere, and there's so many different efforts, it just makes it scarce. And then, as we touched on before, without getting into specifics, there's also competitive interest, because many parties are looking for funding for their own projects. Did I put that? Is that about right? And that's why it's so difficult?
If I may, I tend to think of this issue as not having any particular favorites or any particular, it is a nonpartisan issue. And that should be clear. It affects Americans, it affects Russians, it affects Chinese. It's not even, it's way beyond that. And so UAP are more than an unexplained phenomenon. They represent a law enforcement safety concern. If you just go by some of the historic cases where individuals have talked about things that have happened to their bodies or minds as a result, having a UAP preparedness framework will, one, protect frontline officers. That's my primary concern, and the citizens. Two, enhance credibility through sensor-based verifications, which is where the Tedescos come in, where science is mirrored into this whole effort, and then integrate local, state, federal efforts into a cohesive national strategy, which has to be mirrored by our neighbors, other countries, into a comprehensive, cohesive global strategy. As long as we think that it's only affecting one little neighborhood or one little nation, we're going to be only dealing. It's like the scientists, they're blindfolded, feeling the elephant and trying to describe what the problem is. We got to take the blindfolds off and work together and just see it as what it is. The elephant in the room.
Yeah,
So-
definitely remove agendas, remove politics, and
Oh yeah.
wiser, smarter people.
So would you folks say what you just described to me, basically putting together sort of a cooperative layered shell within the country and then within the world, since these things could very well be non-human intelligence originated. I think what you guys just described to me about putting politics aside and special interests. So did I touch on what part of the call it the can of worms is, or what part of the difficulty is? And so I think Dr. Keith, you proposed, a good approach in order to actually fund this effort. Did I get that right?
Well, certainly understanding what's important to prioritize, having
Yes.
a comprehensive UAP response strategy is terribly important as we realize as a society and as human citizens that this is a very, very real issue. How urgent it is, it's hard to tell because we're not able to get the data we need to understand the frequency of occurrences and the types and kinds that are occurring. We've heard bits and pieces from whistleblowers who are doing incredible work letting the public know the depth of this issue from their perspectives and experiences. But we need to address it from a global scale. You had Dr. Loeb on earlier where he has mentioned recently that he's addressed the UN to try to have a global effort to monitor the meteor that's coming. It just went by Mars and it's going to be coming by some of the other planets. That is the same type of effort ultimately that we're going to have when dealing with UAP and all of its different iterations, whether it's a drone or whether it's an orb or whether it's whatever it shows up as. It's not it. I'm sure it's they. I am not a expert on UAP by any means, but simply just talking in plainly, I can understand the lack of concern is troubling when the issue is right before our eyes.
The other thing I would add is this compartmentalization, which is occurring in the government. We have these completely compartmentalized areas of the government that are withholding some of these secrets. It also seems to be it occurs in the private sector too. Maybe not to that level, but that becomes a problem too. If we have groups compartmentalizing their work and they're not sharing their work, or they're not considering the idea of collaboration, full scale collaboration. We get a lot further if we had full scale collaboration with everybody working on this. It's not going to be discovered by one group,
No.
one effort. It has to be a collaborative effort with everybody applying their own resources.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, coming in, Gene. So, as we have Gene, we did touch on last time when we spoke, guys, about Gene's disclosed Soviet reverse engineering of a UFO. I'll let Gene jump in. He had some questions. Go ahead.
I do have your book, by the way, Gene. Yes, I bought it as soon as I found out that you were releasing it.
I think your microphone might be muted.
Yeah, your microphone is muted. You just have to unmute it. No, Gene's microphone.
Yes.
Okay. I think.
We have to unmute Jim. All right.
There you go.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you hear me now? All right.
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's only we're only on almost hour 7. I knew we'd finally figure it out at one point. No, I was saying I appreciate that. Yeah, it's it's been fascinating. I come out of an Intel background. I retired in 2017. This dropped in my lap in 2019 from my father-in-law, and it's just having the old skill set was purely what got me involved in digging into the materials, both trying to understand what they were, then validate, verify them, and have sort of gotten into some experimentation, let's say. So I've, one area of work that I've done where I've been looking to compare the science against the U.S. programs and Russian programs as well, but there's a plethora of more information that aligns the core scientific domains within my father-in-law's body of work with U.S. programs. But what I wanted to focus on was one of the things that one of the early kind of tests that I ran. As I sat back and I thought about it, and I said, okay, well, if we accept this is the reverse engineering of a UFO and all of its functions and how it works, would that, asking myself, can that help us identify potential ways to spot them, to identify them? In the papers, it talks about how they use gravitational and how it generates gravitational magnetic fields, how in the relationship of the craft to the planet and the Earth and the territories that it's traveling in. And back in 2024, I ran my first tabletop experiment where I identified the optimum locations in the U.S., which ones had all of the geology that we could say was would optimize the performance of the craft. At that point, and then the only real research I had available as far as reportings went was MUFON and International UFO Network. So I picked a day, which was it was December 24th, I think. And that was because it was the second new moon of the month, and it was like a plus 2% gravitational impact. And for 2 weeks following, I just mapped where reports came from versus the identified optimized locations. I ran that test again this past August, this time incorporating in space weather factors and then just weather in general. So as the more I dove into the works, I was, picked up on things like thunderstorms, lightning plus 3-4 days on either side of events because of ionization in the air that's caused by the crafts generating these fields and whatnot. Excuse me. And this time I was at about an 85% rate. And when I started noticing, and this is getting to the question if it's similar to your research. So I started noticing these patterns in corridors of these highly charged optimum locations. A lot of them correlated to hot spots that craft are normally known to be at. And then if there was a sighting reported, that it would usually fall no more than 150 miles from the optimized location, that was picked, usually within 50 miles, otherwise no more than 150 miles. So, my question is, in your research and, what you've identified perhaps as optimal factors that exist around these sightings, does that seem to jive? Is it off? Where might it link, if at all?
You want to stop? Well, it's very interesting. It's certainly it's something can be field tested. As I said, that includes us getting out there, or other group extension of us getting out there. But I mean, it's very interesting. we've been doing studies. We just published a paper on long delay echoes from radar anomalies from these objects. Produces that suggests that they might be producing these gravitational fields around them. And it's something that we're looking more deeply into, and John could probably talk a little bit more about that.
Right, and this is, you know, of course this affects the whole electromagnetic spectrum. I mean, it's light, it's radio waves, you know, everything in between. It's you know, we're seeing these anomalies on when these objects are present. We're seeing them exhibiting some kind of a chromatic aberration. They also seem to be producing radio anomalies around them. We're having interesting effect on our radar systems, our marine-based radar systems. We get odd reflections. We get sometimes complete blocking of the radar signal or severe interference patterns that's being produced. These radio waves seem to be coming back at times late. Sometimes they come back too early, producing some really odd display issues, you know, that we're seeing. But you know, oddly enough, that you know, we have gotten a number of reports and videos from law enforcement officials and the public that, you know, showing these objects that seem to be almost, it's like looking at a kaleidoscope, you know, where these objects are rotating and they're giving off this varying wavelengths of light, changing light, and it's you know, at first glance, you'd say, well, you know, this might be the aberration of the lens system in the cameras, but you're seeing with your eyeballs too. You know, you're seeing this stuff, and there does seem to be some kind of an oddity with the direction of these objects rotating too. If they're rotating towards the observer, they seem to go through more of like a blue shift. If they're rotating away, they go red shifting. So, you know, we're looking at this stuff and saying, you know, could this in fact be some kind of a distortion around them? You know, a gravitational distortion that's affecting the radio waves, you know, light and also the, you know, some of the like, you know, recent LiDAR measurements that we made, that we've had a couple of oddities where an object that we believe to be, you know, over 500 meters away from us, you know, we've had returns like showing that they were 30 meters away from us, or 100 meters. You know, it just doesn't seem to make too much sense. You know,
there's also some bizarre diffractions of the light around these objects, which is quite interesting. So we have reached out to other researchers, a group in Canada, 2 engineers in Canada who are doing research on looking at magnetic, gravitational anomalies.
Alcubierre, calling an Alcubierre.
And the possibility of an Alcubierre type drive.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is we reached out to Heslin, the group doing the Heslin project researches. They're seeing some oddities. And we have another research group that's also that we've been collaborating with, trying to make this determination.
Right. And there is a distortion. I mean, you know, I know, you know, you have some folks in academia saying, you know, why aren't the pictures better? Or you have these skeptics that are saying that, you know, everything's distorted, they're blurry. You know, there might be a good reason for that. You know, that's we've encountered that too. We can look at an aircraft at let's say it's 20,000 feet, and an object that's sitting at around 6,000 feet. The aircraft is clear as a bell, and the object is distorted. You know, we can't get any detail or any definition around it. And it may in fact be some kind of a distortion of light or the field around the electromagnetic effect of the object. You know, so cameras don't, you know, they can't give you a really good clear indication as far as what's out there.
Well, I don't want to have a spoiler alert for you, but go over and get the book from Dr. Taylor, because it's all in there. Everything, you know, and that's what I found amazing about it. That was one of the early things I did, was begin running the parameters of the physics and the engineering. And I've been talking about that what we are actually seeing and what people are actually capturing is part of an optical illusion that is caused exactly by what, you know, and you're spot on. It's because of the nature of the field that the craft is generating around itself and our perspective to the earth. And I likened it to my layman's version of it was, it's like when we're driving and we think the moon is following us.
Yes.
Crafts, you know, again, according to the work, is operating in its own field within, you know, the structured vacuum, let's say, and it's just our misperception of what we're seeing, and everything you described is right on there. You know, and again, it's fascinating to hear that kind of feedback, and to be, you know, to be able to say, I think this, you know, will probably help you put some science rigor around it, and you know, perhaps have other ways of testing it, because that's been our goal with this. Is, you know, there's enough material in there that reflects enough of the explanation of the phenomenon that would not only allow better testing, but as I mentioned earlier, getting into the U.S. programs, would allow better questions at the congressional level as well. I talk about, these papers were written in the 1980s and have specific parameters for certain things. And then in the 2000s, we see DARPA DARPA organizing research around these exact same specific parameters. So where'd they get that number from? It's, one of those beyond coincidence. As I said, it was 10 to the 630th power chance that it would be purely coincidence and not the result of brain drain, transfer of knowledge, espionage, or just they started at the same place. It seems the Russians did.
Interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and let's say something else too, is that some of the instrumented data that we have, there are transitory effects. If these things are in close proximity of the observer, there's some equipment is not very sensitive to it, but there are pieces of equipment that we've incorporated, like gamma ray spectrometers and that sort of thing, that that do respond in an instantaneous way. I mean, you can look at the counts per second, that sort of thing, and you can see these transitory numbers. They do increase. It is affecting the equipment. The same thing with RF field meters, magnetometers, that sort of thing. In order to qualify that, a lot of these things have to be trend plotted. You got to look at the data over a period of time, and you do see these transitory numbers, these transitory interruptions. It's average. If you average it out, you probably wouldn't see much of anything. Some of the older Geiger counters do that too. They'll average out the counts, but you need something that a lot of this equipment has to be able to measure that instantaneous change. Like I said, if you're within the field of these objects, it does make an impact on the equipment. We are measuring this stuff,
and we can confirm some of the other factors that people have reported seeing over the decades is the electromagnetic effects on the equipment, and also battery drains.
Yes, yeah,
exactly. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to hand you back over to Jim, and hopefully maybe we'll have an opportunity to speak offline. I can show you some things that
sure, absolutely
puzzle my mind constantly.